Hello and welcome, tacticians. Today, a leader whose path was calculated by the ancestors before his first breath. He represents the pinnacle of kin genetic engineering, a living prophecy of efficiency. Today, we're going to be looking at Uthar the Destined, the High Carl of the Leagues of Votann, and I'll be telling you if his fate is one that you should be investing in. As always, thank you to everyone who supports the channel, whether it's through subscribing or using my friend code, as it is very much appreciated. Now, as with Vin, he comes with the Prioritised efficiency, which is obviously going to be the League of Votann special ability, where if a friendly character with Prioritised efficiency uses their active ability, everyone with that trait will switch stances. So everyone will either have the Hostile Acquisition, where you deal more damage and you move quicker, or Fortified Takeover, where you become more resistant. And I think it's a bit early to tell if this is actually good or bad, because with only two characters, we just need to see how the others mesh. I'll get into the two abilities in a second, but he comes with an interesting combination of weapons. He comes with a plasma sword and an energy gun. Now, energy is one of those quite underutilised damage types. It's only Actus, Exeter Row, Anaphet and Calandis who have this. So it will be interesting to see if the rest of the Votann have access to this damage type as well. So let's have a look at his abilities and see what he can actually do for us. So his stats are actually quite good. He looks like a fairly tanky character. His damage, well, we're going to have to see how that actually pans out, but it could be decent as well. But his active ability, Ancestral Fortune, means that he's gaining crit and block chance, which scales based on the level, until the start of his next turn. And if he's adjacent to an enemy unit, he immediately attacks, dealing plasma damage. Then, after a combined total of 6 attacks, and I did check, this does not reduce, that Uthar has blocked or scored crits in after using this skill, the ability can then be used again. And having that ability to be reusable is actually very good. But I think it's his grim efficiency that this guy is really going to be wanted for, because other friendly units within 2 hexes of Uthar gain a bonus based on his current effect from the Prioritised efficiency. And it's not just Votann, it's anyone, and it's within 2 hexes. So if he's in Hostile Acquisition, then all of your friendly units get plus armor, and if he's in Fortified Takeover, they get additional pierce ratio. Now, I don't think this is actually going to help him out in the guild raids. He just moves far too slowly. But I guess there are possibilities that he could be used there on the bosses that don't move as much. But where I do see this being useful is in the guild wars. And it's far too early to tell what he'll be like in the tournament arena. So, what is he like on the battlefield? And we had a peek at this not too long ago with that survival event where, well, let's be honest, these characters didn't really shine. Now let's see how he actually is on the battlefield. And as always, I've got Calandis ready to take that pop shot as Uthar moves, just to see if he can, if only, survive a crit from that shot. So maybe not as survivable as I had originally hoped. However, we have to bear in mind this is in his Hostile Acquisition phase. So what happens if he's in the Fortified Takeover, where he takes less damage? As you can see, we now have Uthar in Fortified Takeover, and we're going to move those same two. There's a crit and, well, unsurprisingly, much more survivable. Obviously, the downside is you can only move 2. So the survivability of these Leagues of Votann is really going to be down to how well they can utilise their active abilities as a whole. And as we've only seen 2, it's far too early to say if it's actually going to be any good or not. This extra survivability with the Fortified Takeover, minus 33% damage, and the Ancestral Fortune, which gives an additional block chance, is this going to be enough to stop Kharn with his kill, maim, burn? Yes, but let's be honest, let's add the Howl in there. So again, we've got that block chance and fortified takeover. This time we Howl, not even getting the double Howl from Orn Shi. And, well, even a normal attack will just kill him in one blow. So I guess the Howling days are still here. So now let's have a look at him in combat. And for this, we're going to be using Titus. So as you can see, Uthar at the moment is in his hostile acquisition. He's going to move around and use his Ancestral Fortune, which, as we're rare, will only increase his crit and block chance by 22% and deal a certain amount of plasma damage. And it looks like you don't need to target the enemy for that, it's just going to choose one. So I'm not sure how that would work when there's multiple enemies to choose from. Now, at the moment, if we look at Vin, he still is in hostile acquisition mode, and that is because it's only at the beginning of each turn and until the end of that turn that they switch stances, which is something I must admit I had overlooked. Now, if we move into range, you can then see he gets the Grim Efficiency armor buff because of Uthar's active ability. So because he's moved in, he's now gained the buff. And we can attack. And now, because it's the opposition's turn, you can see they're in fortified takeover for that 33% less damage. However, this does raise the question, what if you were both to use the active abilities? Will it switch twice? And for this, I've also brought Calandis down, as we're going to move Uthar up and use the Ancestral Fortune. Now, as we know, we're not knowing which one it's going to strike, so let's use it now. End up striking Calandis without triggering that wire weave net. We can then also go up with Vin, who's then going to benefit from the additional armor, and also use the Graviton Rifle. Now, we're going to target Titus, the reason being, well, it didn't do much damage at all. The reason being we just don't want him to die, because we want to see what stance they're now currently in, because remember, they've both used. And it does look like it'll switch, so you are going to have to pay very close attention to how many active abilities you've used, because it will switch for each one. If you use one, it'll switch once. If you use two, it'll switch twice. And so on. Interesting. And back to the Leagues of Votann. You'll see that the tooltip for his Ancestral Fortune will show you how many blocks and crits are needed before he can activate that ability again. So there's no crits there, so it's still 6. Let's see if he can get any blocks in. There was a crit back on him. We can't even risk attacking again. And unfortunately, it's still at 6. But you get the idea. And this is what he looks like at Mythic level. And yes, he does have his own relic, even though there are existing characters who haven't yet received theirs. So what does his relic do? Well, it's the Blade of Ancestors, where he'll gain additional crit chance, and that starts at 8% and deals additional crit damage each time a friendly character dies or kills an enemy unit. And once Uthar crits, that bonus then resets. So it's only actually useful if the other characters are actually killing people, at which point he'll have a big hit and it'll get reset. So, it's nice to have, and I guess those crits would get quite large. So not a terrible relic to get. But is Uthar actually worth all of this? Well, as a legendary character, I would strongly advise, if you can unlock him, that you should, because at least this way is the easiest way to unlock him. But once he's unlocked, well, I think he's not going to be a priority just yet to level up. Having said that, once all the Leagues of Votann are out, that might change. We just have to wait and see what the future holds.